Hello, and welcome to Beyond Books, where we talk about books from Book of the Month Club and beyond. I'm your host, I'm Renee. Today I have a book review for you on my Book of the Month from February of 2024, so this month's Book of the Month. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you to please like, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, give me a comment, please. I am very, very close to 100 subscribers, and I'd love to see you become number 100 or beyond. And a big thank you to all who have subscribed this past week. I've had a very good week on YouTube, so let's keep it up. All right, so let's get to the book review. This is going to be on this book, The Women by Kristen Hannah. Ms. Hannah has become a very popular author as of late. She's written a number of titles, and her seems like maybe her breakout book was The Nightingale, which came out in 2015. I read one of her previous novels by the name of The Great Alone, and she's written some that are historical fiction. I know The Nightingale is, but this book is historical fiction as well. This book is about a young, kind of naive woman. She's about 20 years old when the book starts in 1966, and she decides that she wants to be a nurse and wants to sign up for the Army Nurse Corps. She has the full intention of going to Vietnam and becoming a surgical nurse there, which she does. So the book covers her time in Vietnam and then goes into what happens to her for a period of several years after she returns. Her name is Frances McGrath, but she goes by Frankie. So when the book starts out, her brother is planning on going to Vietnam as a Navy officer. Her family is a military family, and at that time, the Vietnam War is very well supported especially by the type of community that she lives in. It's kind of a military community, somewhat upper middle class, and people are at that time very supportive of the war and of soldiers who go to war. But while she's in Vietnam, in the mud, the blood, and the bullets, as they say, and yes, she is maybe not shot at, but her hospital is under some bombing attacks at times. While she's there, support for the war really starts to dwindle. And once she returns, she is not the person she was. She's not that naive person anymore. But she also finds that she can't really be the person that she was in Vietnam either, because she's having a difficult time with readjusting back into the American culture, which is, obviously what we know now happened to a lot of soldiers, not only from the Vietnam War, but many other wars as well. She finds that she needs some help and she needs some support. She wants to talk about her experiences, but her family is, let's just say, kind of a bit worn down by then with war issues. Her friends don't really understand what's going on with her. No one really thinks or can accept that a woman may have gone to Vietnam. And even if they did, they don't believe that they were really in harm's way. On top of that, Frankie's having some anger outbursts and some nightmares. She's not aware at the time, nor do I think we really had it defined, that these symptoms can be due to PTSD, And she feels, as a result, pretty isolated, except for the few friends who were actually her fellow nurses in the surgical unit in Vietnam. So luckily, she's able to stay in touch with them. Now, although this is a work of fiction, it did remind me of a book that I read long ago and enjoyed very much about a nurse in Vietnam. And that book was called Home Before Morning. You can still find it available. It is written by Linda Van Devender. And I really liked that book. And since reading that book, I've read a number of books about nurses in Vietnam and other wars as well, in the trauma and surgical units. And to me, this book really stacks up pretty well against them. Ms. Hannah did a great job in capturing the atmosphere of the 60s and 70s, not only regarding the issues with the war, but also the women's issues that were happening at the time, political issues, and just the division that was happening within America and what America was going through at the time. Speaking of divisions, in America? Wow, where have I heard that before? So, at the time that I was born, we already had some involvement in Vietnam. Although I don't think we were necessarily sending a whole lot of troops at the time, because the war really escalated in the late 60s, the mid and late 60s, and that's when most of the protests and the pushback against that kind of thing started to come out. A lot of people just in general felt that they were being lied to. Where have we heard that before? And then I guess officially what I have here, the years of the war were 1955 to 1975, when Saigon fell eventually to the North Vietnamese army. But we had been withdrawing troops since around, I think, 1972 or 1973. So I was in my mid-teens at that time. So I remember a lot about this time in our history, and the war is something that I grew up with. I remember the POWs coming home. I remember feeling just so shocked and saddened by everything that had happened to them. Just hearing about the situation, all of the death. It was a time that made an impression upon me. And I still think that this book did a great job with telling the tale. I'm really glad that it was written. I think that the history of the 60s has a lot to say about what's happening in our society today. The issues may be somewhat different, and maybe in some cases are even the same issues, but they've kind of evolved since that time. But there's still a number of similarities, and it's an interesting time, I guess is what I'm trying to say, to study an interesting time. So I gave this book 4 stars on Goodreads. It should really be a 4.2, but you can't give fractions. So I also gave it a bravo. And a bravo meaning that I say bravo to Kristen Hannah for tackling this subject matter. And bravo to all who maybe didn't live through this time in history, but are reading about it anyway, and maybe are coming away with a slightly different perspective of my generation. So I think that both the first chapter in the book, which highlights the fact that women can be heroes, and the last line in the book, which is "we were there," are interesting because they are 2 of the main themes of the story. And when you think about the kind of story that may be between those 2 ideas, it kind of makes you want to read the book. So I highly recommend it. It's hard to believe, but here we are. March is less than a week away. And my next video will be the things that annoy me tag. I was tagged by Book Chat with Pat. And if you haven't seen her channel, I'll put the link below. And you should stop by and give her a visit. Then it'll be time for my February wrap-up, TBR for March. And then also next month, I plan to begin a pottery series on this Beyond Books channel. My partner does pottery, and she is going to have me video the process of getting from a lump of clay to something that looks like this. Or like this. So these are thrown on a wheel by hand and shaped by hand. And then they have to be allowed to be dried to a certain degree because you may, if you want to put any carvings into the clay, you have to leave it, just pliable enough for that. And then next they're fired in a kiln, and that kind of begins the process of curing them or hardening them. And then they are glazed. That's the reason why you see the different colors. There are also two different types of clay if you really look, but yeah, that's what gives you the different colors. It's called a glaze. So that's placed on and allowed to dry, and then they are fired again. So it's a process, and I'll try to show maybe like one or two pieces and just kind of take you through the process as they go through the process, what things look like and what kinds of things, she needs to think about or do to get from one step to the next and come out with the finished product. So remember that women and men can be heroes. You never know when someone might be looking up to you as their hero. So step up and always try to be someone that they can count on. Thank you very much for watching.